It's always recording. I already feel it. Um, what do I do? I hate this question.
What do you love?
I love vintage clothing. I love looking for vintage clothing. I love my family. I love my skincare routine. Um, yeah, no, I love those are some of the simple things that I love. But yeah, I don't like the question of like, what do you do? It's hard for me to, yeah, it's hard for me to explain that without like giving a cheesy elevator pitch or feeling like I always feel inauthentic when that question comes up. Like it just feels like forced. Like, oh, what am I going to say today? And it changes every time. It was 2008, recession hit, and the company I was working for fired me 2 weeks before my 25th birthday. And I actually thought I thought I was getting a promotion. And so I dressed up, feeling all good. And I walked in and they're like, yeah, no, like we're letting you go. And I was like, oh shit, didn't see that coming. So that was like the end of my world at that moment. And I didn't know what to do because I moved my life to Montreal for this industry for my career. And so I went home for the holidays and my sisters were very much like, just take it easy. Like you don't need to go back and find a job. Like, how about you move home and like just take some time off and like take like a year, a gap year essentially. So I did that and it was probably one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life. I think a lot, but I don't necessarily think out loud a lot. And I think I get very caught up in my head of how I want to say things. And so then I just don't say things at all. Or I feel like, oh, so frustrated because I can't articulate things the way I want, like the way it is in my brain. So communication again is just like something that I think I've always struggled with, which was probably why I like gravitate to creating experiences the way I do, because then I can create something that people can um, be a part of rather than me having to like, I'm not a strong writer and I don't communicate my thoughts through like writing necessarily, but I can communicate my not just thoughts, but my ideas through how people experience um, a project. Like I was creating these really interesting experiences and building community, but I wasn't able to like make money. So that was a bit of a low. And then the high, it's like, okay, boom, that led me into working for a pretty cool company that allows me to essentially like bring my ideas to life. But in those last 5 years working for the company, it's been like such a roller coaster, realizing of how much I don't know and how much I've had to learn through failing constantly. Um, so yeah, like the failures obviously always lead to eventually a boost of confidence of realizing like if I didn't fail, I wouldn't have known. I had confidence, but I didn't. Like I think it was I masked it with like fashion. And I masked it with like dressing a certain way. Or people would always tell me that I'm intimidating and I'm like, but why? Like and then I think it's just based off of how like my resting bitch face or my clothing or how I like presented myself. But I'm like, if you only knew like how insecure I am in this moment or like how uncomfortable I am or how like socially awkward I actually am in this moment. But that doesn't necessarily come out in like the first interaction with people. Um, yeah, I don't know if I answered that question properly, but I think yeah, the it's easy for me to put a put a mask on rather than like have like authentic moments and just show my true colors. Hiding behind my phone through just texting and social and all the things that we have now and all the distractions we have now has created like poor communication skills for me specifically. And I'm realizing more and more, I'm like, wow, if I like don't actually get really uncomfortable and talk on the phone with people that I don't know, like this is gonna continuously get worse. So that's been like something that has been popping up in my head a lot lately. Not just about dating, but just specifically like having more conversations and having, um, not just always being like thinking in my head alone, but actually having conversations out loud with strangers and going past the small talk and being able to get deeper with people. So my sister, like my eldest sister, she's a nurse, and my other sister's a teacher. So definitely they went through traditional paths. And then there was me, and I'm like, I'm going to fashion school. And obviously it led me to fashion, but it didn't lead me to like being a designer, which I thought that's what I was going to do. And so, yeah, I'm like not your typical like story of a South Asian girl who has to deal with her parents. Like, my parents will sometimes say, like, you sure you don't want to go into nursing? I'm like, guys, that ship has sailed. I'm not going down that road. Like, I'll pass out if I see blood. I can't do this. So yeah, I'm very, 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 very grateful that my sisters have had to do a lot of the hard work to allow me to be able to kind of just coast, not just coast, but like get through life a bit easier. There's moments where I remember life being very like high and mighty, and I had all the confidence in the world. And there's moments where like I dipped low, and I keep going back to that explanation. But when I'm dipping low, it's like I go back to that child in like grade school of like feeling like, oh, I'm not like this, like everybody else, or I don't look like everybody else, or yeah, like feeling lesser than. And so whenever I am low, like I automatically go to that spot and I go to that place. And sometimes it's hard to like get out of that. But I eventually manage and I find my ways out of it every time. I just like, I don't even like taking photos anymore because I don't like looking at who I am today. Sounds crazy. Yes, I love myself, but sometimes it's just like really, really hard to see yourself age. And no one talks about it, especially for women. And we're in the era of like Kardashians, everything has to be perfect, Botox this. Like no one talks about like aging in a way of just like loving yourself through that process. So it's a struggle. And like I'm definitely figuring out ways where I can be okay with the new wrinkle, the new line, the new thing that wasn't there 2 years ago. But it's so hard. Hence why I have a crazy like skincare regimen, which may or may not be working. And maybe the skincare industry is taking all my money and it's not real. But it's so, yeah, it's really hard.